Welcome into Rob Wright's Gen X Pop Culture. And today, with football season kicking off in 2024, we're going to talk about a sentimental favorite football movie of mine. Now, this movie is not the best football movie. It's not as good as Remember the Titans or Brian's Song, which Brian's Song is probably one of the best football movies ever made. It's not Newton Rockne All-American. All those are fine football movies, but it's a sentimental favorite for me. Simply because of the story and the message that it has. And the movie is a movie you may not be familiar with because it wasn't a big blockbuster hit like some of these others were. It's not as well known, but it stars some very famous actors, Kurt Russell and Robin Williams, in the movie The Best of Times. So this movie came out in 1986. It didn't do very well in the theater, and it's been overlooked. It's been played a lot on the classic movie stations, and I saw it on cable a bunch growing up. And when I fell in love with football as a kid, really liking and going to games with my dad, college games, and then eventually getting into my high school football. And how exciting it was for our team and our local school. This movie really grabbed me and drew me in because this movie has some interesting connections and some interesting things about it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this movie, tell you why I love it, and then I'll tell you some of my favorite scenes, and we'll wrap it up. And then also I'll show you some slides from it. It's actually free on YouTube. So I'll share the link so you can watch the movie if you haven't ever seen it. And if you don't remember it, hopefully this will bring back some memories. So the movie's called The Best of Times. And what the movie is really about is it's about regret and what can you do to overcome maybe a mistake that you're well known for. Can you go back and redo it again? Obviously, you can't go back to the past, but can you change the future or change the perception? And what happens in this movie is Robin Williams' character is plagued by a pass that he didn't catch that could have won them the ball game that would have been monumental for his high school football team and his whole town. And he blames himself for everything, which is probably not quite true, but he still has that. And what would happen if they replayed the game and he got to redeem himself? And so it's a unique story, a unique event. It's not like anything going back in time. It's not like Heaven Can Wait, where somebody's soul jumps into the body of another person to play and actually win the game, which that was a good movie. Heaven Can Wait is also a really good football movie as well. This movie is unique in the sense that, hey, what if you had a chance to regroup and redo something later on in life to change perceptions of people? And that's a noble cause. That's a great reason for this movie. And that's one of the many reasons why I love this movie. So first off, Robin Williams and Kurt Russell are in this movie. It's the first time they collaborated together. And I love both of these actors. Robin Williams, I wish he was still with us. I was so sad when he passed away. But he's just a brilliant actor, brilliant comedian, and he's great in this movie. Kurt Russell is an amazing action star. There's so many great movies with him in it. Of course, Call Me Snake. You have Big Trouble in Little China. You have all kinds of great movies, and we'll do some Kurt Russell movies later on as we go, including Big Trouble in Little China, which is a great movie. I love that movie. The Thing is probably coming up soon. I'll do that. But I love both these actors, and both of them are great and fun and funny in this film. Like I mentioned, the story, it has something that's interesting. So did you ever have something that you wish you could go back and do over and change? Do you have a perception that people have of you that you wish you could redo so they would change their minds about you? That's what I love about this movie, because it's unique, and it's a unique way that they go about doing this. The other aspect is, how do you change the way people think about you? How do you get them to really respect you? Part of that starts with self-respect, which I think Jack finally learns at the end. But the other aspect of it is, what can you do to change people's minds? And it's interesting what he does in this movie. So, third reason, absolutely love the game of football. And this movie reminds me of what it was like in high school with my high school football teams. And my high school football teams were really good. I was very fortunate to hang out with all the guys. I didn't play. I played in junior high, but I was not any good at football. But I hung out with all the football players in my high school. I love them. Wow, it was an amazing run that we had. So my 3 years of high school, we didn't have a 4-year one. We had a 3-year one. So I went sophomore, junior, and senior year. So sophomore year, we were one game away from the state championship game in the big school 5A. Junior year, we won district and unfortunately had too many injuries and lost in the second round of the playoffs. Senior year was amazing. Senior year, we won district and we made it to the Final Four, one game away from the state championship game again. And that team had great athletes, but that team had more heart than any other team I have seen in a long, long time. I've seen some other teams with heart, but that team, my senior year, those guys, they came together as one unit and had the heart of a lion. There's so many wonderful memories about it. And what this movie captures is how the town gets behind a former high school football team and how small towns, this movie takes place in California, but particularly in Texas, small towns, your Friday nights, everybody in town's at that game representing your team because that town represents you. That team represents you and your pride, your school, your community. And this movie captures that very, very well. And it shows how, high school football means so much to these small towns that people remember these things. And that's very true across America, particularly here in the state of Texas. Oh my goodness. High school football is covered not nearly as much as college now, but it used to be. And it's such a big deal. It's crazy. It's Friday Night Lights is real. Even though I can't stand Friday Night Lights, and that's a discipline, and we won't talk about that. I'll tell you that some other time. Got a little bones to pick with Permian, particularly when you tie them in the playoffs and they win on first downs, but that's another story for another day. Anyway, the other aspect about football that I love is the story of the underdog, and that not only reminds me of the great American underdog story, such as your Rockies and several other stories, but it reminds me of my college, my university, that was very much an underdog, a smaller private school that got their butts kicked quite frequently growing up. And I'd be at the games with my dad, and we'd see him win a couple, and occasionally we had a good upset, and a good year was to get to 500. So the underdog aspect, and that was instilled in me at a young age, and it's the stuff that dreams are made of, because when you do have that upset, or you do finally win, or you do see your school do the unthinkable as mine did a couple of years ago, and just to get in the national title game, it's just amazing. And it's those things that you dream about and you hope for and are just really special. And so this movie brings that special feeling about the game, about the people, about what football means to people out. And that's what I love about this movie. Now, in the movie, Robin Williams' character is obsessed with football. I don't think I'm nearly as obsessed as him, although there were some points in my life when I probably was. And many of my friends can probably say, I don't know, Rob. But it's a good showing of what a person is like that's obsessed with football. Then you have Kurt Russell, who played the quarterback, who was the All-American, all everything, and he hurt his knee on the last play of the game back then, and he threw the ball to Jack, the wide receiver, who dropped it. And his career was over because he hurt his knee. But it's one of those things that you think about with somebody who played back then and who had a significant injury or didn't make it as far. They don't want to ruin the stories and the legends about them. And so Kurt Russell in this movie was hesitant to play the game again and was hesitant to get involved in this simply because he didn't want to lose the memories of what people thought of him. And that's a very real thing. A lot of people are built up as heroes or gods. We see it with Hoosiers and Jimmy Chitwood and how he's built up. We see in this movie with Kurt Russell, and he basically tells him he doesn't want to, throw something in the trash can and miss it and have somebody say, "Hey, Reno, you losing your touch." And that's very real. That's a very real thing in life, in sports. Unfortunately, that's kind of the bad side about it, because there should be a little grace, because hey, he did that 13 years ago in the movie, and then he's older now. Why are you going to rag on him for something he can't do as well as he did when he was 18? So I digress. But that's the heart of the movie. That's what this movie's about. The other aspect of this movie is big town, small town. How does a small town rally? How do they lift themselves up out of the doldrums? That happens here. The other aspect is, Robin Williams, his character's father-in-law, is for the other team and was very big on the other team. So you have a family aspect to it too. So very interesting movie, very interesting concepts, very simple concepts, but done in a unique and fun way. I think it's one of my favorite football movies. Like I said, it's not the greatest movie of all time. It's not the greatest football movie out there. I mentioned several that are much better, but this one's a solid football movie which captures the essence and the passion, particularly about those Friday Night Lights on high school football. Anyway, let's get into some of my favorite scenes of the movie. And yes, it's been around since 1986. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to spoil some of it here, but I will send the link to where you can watch it on YouTube. And it's not a very long movie. It's about an hour and a half. And it moves pretty well, particularly with Robin Williams. How zany he can get and how funny he can get. And I'm going to tell you about that. So let's bring up some of the slides. Now, the slides, I had a hard time finding the slides for the exact scenes. So there are several slides that are different scenes in the movie. But I'll talk a little bit about the slides, and I'll talk about these favorite scenes of mine coming up here. So let's see. All right, so here's kind of the cover, and you see Reno Hightower, Jack Dundee, Robin Williams, and Kurt Russell as part of the movie, and kind of the high school yearbook. So Jack talks about the town of Taft, which is a real town in California, and he talks about how they changed their name way back in the early 1900s when they struck black gold Texas tea. Very much an oil reserve town. As a matter of fact, it's one of the largest oil reserves in the country. It's I still think it's one of the biggest for the Navy, and it was site of the Teapot Dome scandal as well. So very interesting aspect. He talks about his town growing up, and he has such a passion for his town. He talks about the weather and how bad it was with rains and flooding. He talks about a boxer, Kid Lester, the underdog, who was going to, lead the town and was something they were very proud of until he got knocked out in the 5th round, and they hadn't seen him since. And so it's interesting how Kid Lester plays in this because he's the underdog. And throughout it, he tells you about Taft versus a larger town, Bakersfield, which is another town in California, and how Bakersfield beat him 82-6 almost every year. So they got their butts kicked every year up until 1972. And this one screenshot is one of the flashbacks. All these are in black and white. And he talks about, we had a quarterback, Reno Hightower, Kurt Russell's character, who was a great quarterback. and he tells the story of the game in 1972, a last chance to beat him. It's a scoreless game with only seconds left. He lets a pass fly. He gets hit. His knee's not any good, but what a pass. And there's a man open, and it's Robin Williams' character, and he's wide open, and he has the ball, and it hits him in the hands, and it kind of bobbles, and he's like, but that SOB dropped it. And then he goes, I was that SOB. And I just love that line. It's hilarious. Robin Williams just describes all this in such wonderful detail that only he could do. And I love that line. That's one of my favorite lines for this movie. And it sets up the whole premise of the movie and puts you in it to understand what's really going on and understanding the character of Jack. That's the other aspect about this movie. It's very character driven, particularly around Jack and Reno's characters and their wives. And you get to see and understand each of these characters and their different points of view, which is really good. I like it. All right. So there's Jack and his wife. He works at the bank. He's the head of a bank. And she's coming to collect a check for a play that they're putting on at the local theater that she's producer of. And all is well and good. She's happy. Their marriage seems to be good. And her father, who's the head of all these banks, he owns all the banks, and he made Jack a vice president, came by to put up a new poster. And he's real big into Bakersfield and Bakersfield's football team. And, basically he's for the other town, the big city town. And he basically torments Jack about dropping the ball. So a lot of the torment doesn't necessarily come from the townspeople or the people around Jack. They come from his father-in-law, which is interesting. But this whole opening scene and the whole way that they do it really sets up the movie, and you get a feel for, Jack and who he is and how he cares about football. And his wife really is trying to get him to get over it and to stop worrying about it. But it's something that he can't. He carries it with him. So we're introduced to Reno, who's the former quarterback who owns a van shop where he fixes cars and he paints vans, which is kind of cool. And Jack has a problem with his car, takes a loaner there. And so these are former teammates as well that work with Reno. And Jack gets the idea for the game, and he goes and challenges Bakersfield without getting anybody else. He knows it's something he has to do. So he sets it in motion, and it leads to more trouble. So he's asking Reno to help him out. He kind of tells him his idea. He takes him out to a football field, gives him the game, asks him to pose. And he's like, this means you'll play. And so he's going to take it to the Order of the Caribou the next day. And Reno's like, okay, this has got to stop. And he tells the Order of the Caribou, hey, whatever Jack brings up in this meeting, I got it back, but you guys vote it down. And they actually kind of do. So Jack goes to extreme measures, and it's my next favorite scene. So Jack disguises him as a Bakersfield Tiger, which is the mascot of the big school team. And he goes around town throwing paint everywhere, putting up signs that says Bakersfield better than Taft. He destroys his own office. He destroys the Caribou Lodge. He goes into the bar where Reno's wife is, and he that's more of the Caribou. This is the aftermath. He goes to the Caribou Lodge, and he dumps paint on Reno's wife and several other singers that are singing at a hotel. That's what she does. That's part of her job. And it's just hilarious, the lengths that he goes to. And you get this reaction from everybody in town, except Jack and Reno's wife are the only two that don't want to do this, that think it's stupid. But after this, everybody gets on board with Jack and still want to play the game. And so he's able to set up this game, this rematch of the two teams from 1972 to play NFL style about a month later. And so it's hilarious what he does to get them to do it by messing up the town and doing all this stuff. And there's a point where he breaks the gavel when he's in the room and shows it, oh, disrespecting authority. And so it's funny how Robin Williams kind of manipulates the whole town into going with his crazy zany idea to redeem himself. So next we see they bring in guys from the 72 team from all over, and they start training. And you see the town start to get behind them. And you see kind of the rebuilding of the town, which is good. I mean, you know, it brought some pride. They're getting behind this. Everybody's all in. And that's what's so cool about it. So the training is fun. I couldn't get all the footage from it, but Robin Williams does some funny things. He has them doing aerobic exercises, which is part of right here. And that's hilarious. There's some scenes where they're practicing football and Robin Williams does a couple of moves and misses the ball again and again. And it's just funny. It's fun and hilarious. Of course, you know, aerobics was huge in the 80s. And, you know, now it's not as big, but there are other types of exercises. So it was just fun to see all these grown men doing aerobic exercises and what they do with the tape and everything. It's just hilarious. So that's part of Jack convincing the town and the town kind of rebuilding. So both of their wives kind of leave them. And, you know, Jack's wife is upset because if they play the game, she's going to get all kinds of crap from her father. She doesn't think Jack needs to do this. He just needs to get over it. Reno's wife has not been happy. She wants to be a singer. She's threatening to divorce him. And they invite the guys to dinner for one last chance to kind of redeem themselves. So here they are at the dinner, and the only two things they can't talk about are football and sex. And it's a Monday night. And so the whole thing of the dinner is it's during Monday Night Football, which is a passion for Jack. And they mentioned Atlanta, Minnesota, who are 0-17 between them, which was not true at the time because you didn't have buys and they didn't play on Monday night. But it fits in the movie. Anyway, so Jack and Reno are having a good dinner. They're having a ball. It's another favorite scene of mine because there's so many funny lines. And so there's a point where, you know, they're talking about world events, and Reno goes, we talk about Beirut. What do you know about Beirut? He the best damn baseball player ever lived. Babe Ruth, Beirut. So it's pretty funny. And we see Jack, he turns on the TV with the sound down because the wine's going through him and they keep going to the bathroom. And he moves the TV so the guys can see the TV, but the girls can't. And they're talking, this is the table set up, and they're watching football. And, you know, Jack makes a comment about as he sees somebody make a nice catch. Oh, nice hands. Oh, a little cold hands. And he covers it up. It's really funny. And finally, there's a major play, and Jack reacts to it, and that's how they get discovered. And the guys get kicked out, and they end up at a bar, which is pretty funny. And I just thought that was a hilarious scene. There's a lot of good lines in there. There's just, you see the obsession that Jack has for football. It's crazy. It's beyond lunacy. But that's who he is. That's what it is. And, you know, the girls are trying. The guys did try too, but it didn't work out this time. So as the movie progresses, they learn about Bakersfield, and you see that here, and they realize that they really don't stand a chance. And there's actually a homecoming dance coming up, and the girls kind of go straight to the ladies' room. They don't want to dance with the guys. But, you know, Reno's wife says, you know, this is the night you better dance with them because we're going to get killed tomorrow. And the girls know it, and the girls start to realize that. And I love this scene because it's very tender. You know, Reno goes back to his shop, and he's going to fix his wife's car, which he never was going to do because he loved her and he didn't want her to leave. So he kind of admits defeat, and she goes and she finds him and she dances with him. So you see them in his shop dancing. And then basically Robin Williams' character Jack goes into the ladies' room to find his wife, and he apologizes and admits that, you know, they're going to get their butts kicked the next day, and that he was wrong to choose the game over her. And she dances with him, and they have a very tender moment. It's a great scene. It's a fun scene. The other aspect of it is that it had some prom elements to it, which is just great. And it just reminds you of high school. It's kind of like a high school reunion. And that's what I love about this movie. And unfortunately, I haven't been to a lot of my high school reunions, and that's another story for another day. But those things, the good times, the good moments, the tender moments, that's what's good about this movie. All right, so my final favorite scene is obviously the game. And there's the Bakersfield team coming in, and you have the game, and then Taft running out. And so the first half of the game goes badly for the guys, but Bakersfield does lose their best player for injury. And Jack's in the locker room, and he basically says, "Hey, we've really messed up things." And he takes out a bottle of whiskey, drinks it, and tells Reno to puts it back in his bag, which has the tiger outfit. So he's basically admitting to Reno that he was the one that caused all that. And so he tells Reno to go get a drink. Reno starts to get a drink, and he sees the costume. And basically, Reno almost kicks his butt. And Reno's now all in and gets really upset. And this is where Reno does a 180 on it and realizes that he's got to put everybody on his back and do this. And, you know, Jack, he got what he deserved in that. It's a real funny scene what he does with Jack. I'm not going to tell you, but I want you to watch it, and it's really good. And then you see Reno walking out, and one of the big things was he wore white shoes, and those were important, and everybody reacts to it when he puts on his white shoes for the second half. Second half starts to rain, becomes a mud bowl, but Taft mounts a comeback. They're down 26-0, and they come back, and they are down 26-21 with just seconds left to play. And Robin Williams finally goes in. He keeps getting his butt kicked by the corner. I won't tell you any more of that because it's really funny, a great scene. And finally, we come up with the 5 seconds left. Taft has the ball at their own 45. They need a Hail Mary to win the game. And Reno says, "Jack, give him your best move." You know, "Oh, you're not going to throw it to Jack again, are you?" "No, I want to win." And this is his moment. This is his moment of redemption. And so he's actually able to do some of the dance moves to avoid the corner, gets open. Reno throws in the ball, and you see him, you know, making the juggling catch. And Reno can't believe it. He crosses the end zone. Taft wins the game, and he gets his redemption. And so that's what's great about this movie is that he got to redo it again. And at the end, he does earn the respect of his father-in-law. You know, one of the Bakersfield fans goes, "How did that idiot ever catch the ball?" And his father-in-law actually stands up from, "Idiot, that's my son-in-law." So it was great. So this movie, The Underdog, wins. It's a great moment. It's a great moment of redemption, great moment for the town, great moment for these characters. And the other character that appears at the end who watched the game was Kid Lester, which kind of just shows what it is to have an underdog and what it means to a town. So anyway, that's the best of times. Do you know this movie? Do you like this movie? What are your favorite scenes? What are your favorite lines? Tell me in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. And also, I'll have the link below if you want to watch the movie. It's a good movie. Please watch it. I think you may like it, especially if you like football and you have some memories about high school football yourself. Anyway, see you on the next one.